Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Anthony Broome and Chris Balas here on a big game week for the Michigan Wolverines in Ann Arbor. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to drop a like. Let's get this video to 500 likes. Hit that thumbs up if you believe Michigan's going to pull out a top 10 victory over Penn State this weekend. Number 5, and Chris is giving his thumbs up there, so smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button as well. Number 5, Michigan against number 10, Penn State. This is kind of what things have been building towards for Penn State and Michigan on both sides over the last few weeks. Penn State, talking to some guys on our Penn State On 3 site, their staff, they said as soon as that Auburn game was done a few weeks ago, all the focus shifted towards Michigan from the fan base. And Michigan, a little tougher having to go to Iowa over the last couple of weeks, but the focus is now here in this game, and it's going to be a tough challenge. Michigan's toughest test yet, of course, and we can start there with the offense against what is a very good Penn State defense. Part of this, we're past the halfway point of the season, but you still look at the stats, and while Penn State hasn't played a tough schedule, Michigan hasn't played the toughest schedule, so it's hard to totally judge where things are at, but Penn State's done a great job stopping the run on defense. They've done a great job of making their opponents pass. They faced the most pass attempts per game in the country, 45.2, and they've been really good against the pass, 5.8 yards per attempt, which ranks 12th. Great defensive backfield. Joey Porter Jr. at corner is going to be a first-round pick next spring, in my opinion. So they've got kind of the makings of a very good defense that could challenge this Michigan offense. Make it tough for Blake Corum to run the football, put the game in JJ McCarthy's hands even more. If Michigan gets off schedule, I think it could be tough. But what do you guys see from, this matchup of the Michigan offense going up against Penn State's defense?
Yeah, I want to see if Michigan can stop the run. And I think Nick Singleton's been good against a couple of bad teams. I was looking at the rushing ranks of some of the teams that he put up big numbers on, and they're terrible. I think Auburn's 92nd in the country against the run, and I think Ohio is 99th. So, but you don't know. Auburn, going down to Auburn and winning, guys, in that environment is still impressive, the way they did it. So I'm just not certain if that was the anomaly, because I watched their other games and I didn't see anything stand out. There was nothing really special about them. I think Singleton, a freshman back, is Michigan going to let a freshman back come in here and run wild? I don't know if he's that good. And I don't think their offensive line is that good. So I think maybe Michigan's got an advantage there. And as much as we talk about the Penn State defense, who have they shut down? Who have they had to shut down? I think Purdue moved the ball like crazy on them. Probably should have won that game. Granted, it was the first game of the year. So, and the last time I thought, boy, Michigan's going to have trouble moving the ball on the ground was Iowa, and they flat out punked them up front. And granted, again, Iowa's not the Iowa of old. They weren't as physical and as good, but they're still, if you look at their defensive numbers, that was the one game in which they didn't play well. So I think this Michigan offensive line is going to take this as a personal challenge. Losing Trente Jones, I think, hurts, because I think he was a better run blocker. Carson Barnhart was a little slow in his sets last week, but I like Michigan to win the ground game and thus win this football game.
Yeah, my early take is echoing a lot of those similar things. I mean, for me, I look at matchups in a game like this. A guy like Mike Sainer still has played really well, but now he's going to play probably the best slot receiver that he's seen all year in Parker Washington, who I believe, Clay, I saw does most of his damage out of the slot there. So that's a matchup that you're going to be looking at. Obviously, Joey Porter Jr., you imagine, gets that assignment against Ronnie Bell. This is going to be a game where, again, I know that Michigan fans are kind of, Penn State is going to stack to stop up the run and load the box and all those things. And people say, oh, well, let JJ sling it, throw it down the field. And to me, it's similar to Iowa in that I don't know that you're just stepping back, closing your eyes and letting the ball rip down the field. But I do think that this coaching staff is going to have to scheme some of those guys wide open, whether it be through the quick game, through the play action, through the crossing route, some of the stuff that we saw when Michigan started to get cooking on offense last week. So those are things to all keep an eye on. I think from a run game perspective, again, Penn State's run defense has been tremendous from a statistical standpoint. I think they have the guys up front to get the job done. But again, they've played my alma mater and CMU, and they've played Ohio and Purdue, and they've put and a sloppy game against Northwestern. Like those, I don't know that those guys have been, I won't say they haven't been tested there, but this is obviously the best run team, the best offensive line that Penn State will have seen so far. So I do think that, if Blake Corum is kind of on this trajectory that he's at, I do think that we might see him have a Heisman type moment on Saturday, or just a play that you throw in that highlight reel, like that run at Indiana last week. So yeah, it's going to be tough. It's obviously the toughest game of the year. I've been saying it all week. It's one of those Big Ten East pecking order games. If Ohio State is, it's weird to say, Michigan's the defending champion, so you'd say they're at the top of the pecking order. But if you consider Ohio State to be the favorite, these games in October, or these mid-October, late October, early November games, you're playing for the right for your respective game against the Buckeyes to matter the most. So that's what's on the line on Saturday. I think that at least offensively, I there's something about this group where pressure has brought out the best of them, whether it's in the non-conference. Hey, you guys are only going to get 2 quarters to play, so you better make the most of it. Or, hey, Maryland's kind of cranking the heat up on you. You guys better figure it out and step up. Or at Iowa, let's come out and make a statement. Indiana, all right, we're up against it in the locker room. Time to hammer down. Every time the screws have kind of been tightened on this group, offensively, defensively, I've liked their counterpunch. And, in that regard, I think that they are a little more tested than Penn State is through this early part of the season.
Yeah, and in that regard, you hope they don't have to counterpunch, because Penn State, I think, is good enough to get a lead and kind of lean on that. That's kind of been their formula too. These teams have the same formula of basically getting ahead, being able to make your opponent pass, pin your ears back, and then, on the other side of the ball, be able to run the football and, kind of pass off of that. So I think you're right. But when you talk about good defenses, and both teams have good to great defenses in this game, I mean, it's typically been the better offense that wins out, and Michigan's edge there with the offensive line, which I think is huge. And then the other side of the ball with the defense being able to play behind this crowd, I think could push Michigan over the top in a game like this. But let's talk a little bit more about Sean Clifford. It's amazing that this is his 4th start against Michigan. You just don't see that often. Usually a guy that starts as a freshman either goes pro by his junior year or transfers somewhere else. But, he starting a couple years into his career, has, basically seen everything in this league, and he's done a pretty good job. Yeah, it's only his 4th start against Michigan. So, he's done a good job this year. And for all the talk about, when is that backbreaking mistake coming? When is Sean Clifford going to screw us from the Penn State fan base? He hasn't done that yet this year. Again, he hasn't been in those types of situations yet, and hasn't faced a crowd like this, yet this season, and a team like this. So that's going to be huge. I think if JJ McCarthy can stay clean against a Penn State defense that forces a lot of turnovers, they forced 11 over the last 3 games, which is pretty incredible. Then Michigan can win this game. If Sean Clifford, plays clean, then I think it's going to come down to the wire, and Penn State will have a chance to win the game at the end. So outside of the run game, I guess, which we already kind of touched on, what do you guys see from Sean Clifford? He's got a good slew of receivers around him. Parker Washington, as you mentioned, Anthony. Brenton Strange from the tight end position is really good with 4 touchdowns this year. They've been really good in the red zone, capitalizing, which could be huge in this game too. And their red zone defense is good. But what do you see more so from the Penn State offense?
I'm going to quote Doc Holliday here and say, I beg to differ, sir, about the venue. If you look at Purdue, I thought that they came out. Purdue had a great venue, and he made it one of those crushing mistakes. Hutch will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had a pick 6 or something that gave Purdue the lead late in that game, and he had to rally from it. Now, to his credit, he made I think what they called Gus Johnson, or somebody called the greatest plays that he'd ever seen, greatest drive that he'd ever seen, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So followed up with a great game-winning drive, but he had that bone-crushing mistake where, Penn State Twitter was blowing up and saying, "Oh my God, can this guy just retire already?" And go to the
Didn't cost him though. Didn't cost him the game.
Well,
and I would not compare Purdue's venue. I mean, Michigan's venue is much better than Purdue's.
In terms of being loud, that was loud. That was a great crowd on a Thursday night. Now Purdue isn't always like that, and we've been to Purdue games where it's a late arriving crowd and even the student section isn't full. I was impressed on a Thursday night, and I thought, okay, especially down the stretch, they were extremely loud. So, but the one thing about him is that he came back and he led the game winning drive in that environment, and I give him credit for that. So, but he did make that bone crushing mistake, and he seems to be good for one of those every now and then. At the same time, I don't think he's as appreciated as he should be by the Penn State fans just for the beating he's taken. What did Michigan have, 7 sacks last year?
Yep.
I think that kid was in pain. You could tell at the end of that game. So I like him. I don't think he's a great quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but when you talk about great quarterbacks across college football, there are some, and then you've got that next tier, and then you've got guys like Sean Clifford that just do a lot to win a lot of games. So we'll see. This is his biggest test, and I'm guessing that he grows a lot on those Penn State fans if he wins this game this week. This is a really big one for him.
Yeah, or he doesn't, and they freak out and say they need to play Drew Aller like what we saw last year. So it's interesting to me that like when we're doing our podcast here and we're talking to people in our fan base and we go, oh God, Sean Clifford, I'm worried about this guy. He's gritty. He just gets the job done. He wins. And I go through, I look at the stats and, on the flip side, all this discourse over, again, I hate to bring this up again, but what Cade McNamara did at Michigan last year, Michigan's fan base kind of bashed him a little bit. So it's like, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle that, these are just good, gritty guys that have won a lot of games and do what it takes within the confines of their team and their scheme to get the job done. And that's the type of quarterback that Sean Clifford is. I mean, if you're Michigan, I think getting out to a fast start in this game is critical, because I don't know that this is if you get Penn State down, I don't know that they're leaning on Sean Clifford to throw them back into the game. So it's one of those things where a fast start, I think, is going to be critical for them. I mean, he does the little things very well, and he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He's I think the term that Jim Harbaugh used on the radio show this week is that he's seen a lot of balls kicked off at the start of a game.
Yep.
So he is exactly what that Penn State offense needs right now, in the same way McNamara was exactly what Michigan needed in that game last year at Penn State, where you just got to run the offense. I mean, your running game is good. Your defense is good. Run the offense, make smart plays, and don't make the mistake that costs your team a game. And that to me is that's really the storyline for both of these quarterbacks, for JJ McCarthy, for Sean Clifford. Michigan is going to be tested by that run game. It's the best running team that we've seen them play so far this year. I think they'll be up for the challenge, though. I like I said before, I think that there's something about this group that when the lights are the brightest, or when the pressure is being cranked up the most on them, there's a sense of urgency there where they kind of lock in. It's, now it's where maybe if they get up to a couple score lead in this game, you worry about them coasting or not playing well. But I really just think that we haven't seen this Michigan team play a full 60-minute game yet. And there's been so much crap, so much discourse about the non-conference. And, they fall in the rankings last week after a 3-score victory on the road, which I don't care who you are. I don't care who you're playing. That's tough to do in any conference, in any setup. I'm waiting to see I've said this to you guys before. I've been waiting to see a little more of an edge with this Michigan team, and I think this is the week we start to see that.
Yeah, and not to continue to talk up Sean Clifford, but he finally now has a run game to lean on. I mean, looking at the stats, last year they ran for just 1,400 yards as a team. They have over 900 through 5 games this season, so that has helped him out as well, too. And that's why I think it's so important for Michigan to stop the run, because we kind of know what the Penn State offense is when it has to be one-dimensional. And Sean Clifford at this point, again, talking to Nate Bauer from Blue White Illustrated, he said at this point, it is what it is when Sean Clifford gets pressured. He's just so shell-shocked, when pressure especially comes through the middle. He cannot make a play, and the stats bear that out when he's under pressure. And the Penn State offensive line, I know it's improved, but that was a low bar for them last season. He's still under pressure a third of the time, which is a pretty high rate. You compare that with JJ, it's around 15, 18%, something like that. So, I think there's an opportunity there for Michigan's pass rush, which has really improved over the last 6 quarters of play, to get home by But again, it does start with that run wall that Jim Harbaugh keeps talking about. And then Michigan's done a good job with, to this point in the season. Anything else before we get to our picks on this matchup that you guys think is interesting?
Yeah, I just don't know how good this Michigan run defense is yet, even though they're ranked 7th in the
Right.
country, because they haven't played anybody, right? And they're playing teams that want to air it out 49 times. They started with the air raid, Colorado State. I think Indiana aired it out 49 times, if I'm not mistaken. So I think a couple of teams abandoned the run a little bit too soon, frankly. I thought Maryland could have had more running success as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what the strategy is for both teams. And how it's approached and how good this Michigan run defense is, because if they do shut Penn State down, you'll feel a little bit better, obviously, going into the other games on the schedule. Not that there are a ton of teams that are going to run on them or throw on them. Let's be honest, the schedule is not as tough this year. But, we're all pointing to that Ohio State game, and how that's going to play out. So if they can continue to get pass rush and if they can continue to stop the run, then you're going to feel much better about that game at the end of November.
Yeah, and I'm just of the opinion in games like this, football is starting to ski, especially with the way it's officiated. A great offense will beat a great defense now if you have great coaching, great play calling, things like that. And all things being held equal, both of these teams have a lot of the same questions, especially as it pertains to the run defense and things like that. But I just feel like we're finally like this. There's another layer to unlock offensively with, we need to see more misdirection. We need to see more play action. All of the numbers bear that out. I'm sure they see it too. Last week, Michigan had a bit of an epiphany in the second half in Indiana where it's like, you know what, let's throw a little bit more on our quarterback's plate and see what he can do. And he made the one mistake, but like we talked in our Monday show, he comes back 10 for 10, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's time to stop being risk averse and just let this team be what it's going to be. Call it smartly, but don't. I think we're going to see that next year this week is the long and short of it.
Yeah, and it's a fine line because one mistake could hurt you, especially in a game that there could be a small margin for error. And I think that Michigan, a lot of this coaching staff and their mentality is on trust. And there's nobody on the team they trust more than Blake Corum and really that offensive line. So I think, that plays a part too. And, I do think we're going to see some of those wrinkles, some more play action, some more things off of what they've already done to this point. But, I still think they want to get that ground game going, which, is disappointing to some people, but you look at the results and the way they've done it, it's been pretty successful over the last, year and a half at least.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean, making adjustments doesn't just mean, okay, now we're going to pass instead of run. It means doing some different things off the looks that you show in the run game, maybe a little bit of misdirection, like Anthony said, or maybe you run some different looks, some different running plays out of formations that you usually run a certain play. So I think we're going to see more of that. And we've seen that Jim Harbaugh do that against Ohio State. We saw it last year a ton. So it's those nuances. It doesn't have to be a drastic change, but it's those little nuances that can get you 6-7 yards, if Penn State is expecting something else and reading their keys. So that's what I'm looking for as well. And I think this is the week that they turn the page of the playbook to get to that page. Yeah.
And just one last final point to sum up what I was saying better. Through 6 games, that's where you start to build tendencies. And that's, the big, obviously you have a large swath of data to kind of pull from if you're an opposing team. This is the type of game, and this is really the time of the year where you start to break tendency a little bit. So that's something I'm going to be keeping a close eye on.
Thank you to Joel Klatt for me having to listen and hear the word tendency about 400 times this week. So that's kind of been the buzzword of the week. But let's get to our predictions for this game and talk about who's going to break out on each side of the ball. But before we do, we want to shout out our sponsor, Prize Picks. Football is back. It's been back for a while now, but there isn't a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports and just pits you against the numbers. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, Prize Picks is the perfect game for you. It's the best way to have action on the game in states like Michigan, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada, not Ontario. You simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. If you're watching on YouTube, Hutch has the Prize Picks site pulled up there. Good looking stuff. You can filter through everything. This week, I will be taking Ronnie Bell, more than 4.5 receptions. He's become that favorite target for JJ McCarthy. And then I'm going to take Brenton Strange, Penn State tight end, more than 3 receptions in this game as well. Michigan's had a little bit of issue guarding tight ends. We saw that against Iowa, so I'll take that. But what do you guys have for your Prize Picks this week?
I've got JJ McCarthy, Michigan, more than 220.5 passing yards. I think that Penn State is going to not sell out to stop the run, but I think they'll have some success slowing the run, and I think McCarthy's going to have to throw more. So, and then I've got Drew Pine, Notre Dame, less than 235.5 passing yards. I don't know why. He just popped up, and so I picked it. Yeah, I didn't feel like, you know what? I wish it was a rhyme and reason. I wish I could sit here and lie to you and tell you that I've watched every Notre Dame game, but yeah, I probably just because I wish for it to happen. So there you have it. Yeah.
That's analysis you can't get anywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm with Balas. I'm on more than 220.5 yards for JJ McCarthy. I'm keeping both of my picks in this game this weekend. Sticking with that more than 220.5 for JJ McCarthy. And then for Sean Clifford, I'm going less than 200.5. So I think Michigan's pass defense is in for a big game on Saturday. So those are my picks for this week.
That would be pretty big. Failed to mention Hutch's picks. Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback, more than 19.5 completions, and Sean Clifford, Penn State quarterback, more than 16.5 completions. And while we are at it, we will add in Hutch's pick for this game. He's a big Penn State fan, as listeners of the show know. He actually has Michigan winning 31-27, and he left that in my hand, so I could be making that up, but that is his actual pick. And he did do some research, so we call him the research team at times, sometimes in jest, but I want to read off some great stats that Hutch provided us with. 5 of Michigan's opponents are 98th or worse in scoring offense. 4 have been 121st or worse. They're holding quarterbacks to 49% completion. That's Penn State. They're 35th in rushing offense. They're 17-1 when Clifford attempts 29 passes or less. So run the football. If you're Michigan, the key to stop the run. They're 1-5 when Clifford attempts 35 or more passes. And Penn State has not beaten the top 5 team on the road since 1994. So our research team was all over that. We appreciate it, Chris.
Let me add something to that. You know who that opponent was? It was at Michigan Stadium
on October
15th, and they were a top 10 team. So it was the actual same date, just 94, 04, 14, 28 years later. So maybe they're due, and maybe that's a sign. So we'll see.
They have a chance. So 7-point favorites. Michigan at home, over-under is 51 points. We had Hutch's prediction there. I got Michigan winning a 4-point game, 24-20, similar kind of to last year, like an old school where you hated watching that game in the moment. It was frustrating. There was a fake kick. You had all sorts of crazy stuff. But at the end, it came down to who was tougher, who was mentally tougher, who was physically tougher, and the team that made some of those plays at the end. Penn State made a great play, strip sack that could have won them the game, but Michigan battled back. I think we're going to see some big plays at the end to decide this thing. And again, the edges for Michigan, in my opinion, are an offensive line that's going against this great run defense that, kind of relishes in opportunities like this. We've seen that over the last year and a half. And 2, that home crowd. Michigan has won 24 out of its last 25 home games with fans in the stands. They've won 11 straight. This has been a great home field advantage. Little better than Purdue's home field advantage. But Chris, what do you have for your pick?
You think so, but if you listen to the noise in that stadium compared to the noise sometimes in
I've been there. Yeah. It's okay.
That night it was fantastic. So I actually watched that game in Westphalia with the wonderful people of Westphalia. So
they are great people.
What did we do? Lose Anthony?
Yeah, I think we did lose him.
Okay. I've got Michigan 27-19. I think they're going to do a good job keeping them out of the end zone. I think Penn State will move the ball some. But I like Michigan at home. Jim Harbaugh wins these games. I think they turn the page a little bit, and I think they have enough running success to come out of there with a win. And I know that Anthony had them winning pretty big. I will speak for him in staff picks. He had Michigan 38-24, I believe. So he thinks it's going to be a hammering. And you know what? if they score 38 points on this defense, then I'm a believer.
For sure. And I think it could get to that point. Like Penn State winning the game would not overly surprise me, but Michigan winning by a couple scores wouldn't overly surprise me either. And I believe we have Anthony back after a technical issue.
There he is.
So, we just read off your pick.
I have no idea what the hell just happened.
I told everybody that you picked.
I don't know. Where are we at here?
Yeah, I told everybody you picked Penn State to win 42-7. So.
Yep. We did read off your pick, though. Can you hear us, Anthony?
I can hear you. Okay. I have no idea what's going on here. Apparently, I'm being attacked from the wind outside. So you read my pick, so I should explain my pick, or did
sure?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm either going to be the biggest soothsayer in the market or the biggest idiot. I'm not sure which one, but there's just something about this game to me that feels like, when Penn State has come to Ann Arbor the last couple times, not the COVID game notwithstanding, it's been lopsided. And I'm not going all the way there, but I do feel like this is a game where Michigan maybe has a defensive touchdown, or we see them finally connect on a couple of those deep balls. And I see a tight game where Michigan pulls away late, and it's a bit of a statement game. So that's why I picked the 38-24. It can be roasted. I'm sure making that pick alone has already made Chris Balas' anxiety go through the roof, and I'll hear about it the second that someone fails to get off the field on third down or something on Saturday. But that's what my gut says, and I'm sticking to it.
I like it.
Yeah, no, great stuff. So glad we were able to get you back on there, whatever happened. Offensive player of the game in this one. I could pick any number of guys on the offensive line, but I'm going to go with Zach Zinter, who's kind of a road grader, a great run blocker. I think he's going to have a nice game, and those guys in the interior are going to have a big challenge going up against PJ Mustipher, Penn State's outstanding nose tackle, and I think Zach Zinter will get the job done. So I'm going to go with the guy up front, but I think the offensive line overall will play well.
Yeah, he had a rough game last week. He had a false start. He had a holding penalty.
Yep.
So he's got to pick it up. He's got to play like the Zach Zinter we know he is. I'm going to go with Blake Corum. I think Corum's going to have come up big behind that offensive line, and I'm going to go with him.
You're going out on a limb there.
Not really. Yeah.
It's a great pick.
I was actually leaning Corum. He didn't play in that game last year at Penn State.
Yep.
Hassan Haskins did and had 31 carries for 156 yards. Do I see 150 yards? I'm not sure, but as I said, it's in the staff pick on the website, and I said it earlier in the pod. I think I could see Blake Corum having one of those long runs and having one of those quote unquote Heisman moments. But so he's certainly one. Luke Schoonmaker, a game like this is a Luke Schoonmaker game. Last year was the Eric All game. Luke Schoonmaker is going to make a big play in this football game and might be, sans Ronnie Bell, this team's most reliable offensive weapon through the air right now. So I'll go with Scooney. He
has been during the Big Ten season. He has 20 catches over the last 3 games, which is incredible. And, I asked him about that this week, and he said his chemistry with JJ McCarthy continues to grow. He was all smiles talking about just how good JJ's been. And I'm sure he doesn't mind a quarterback that's getting him the ball 20 times in 3 games. So that's a good pick. On the defensive side of the ball, plenty of options here, given, what this matchup is, finally a balanced team. I think DJ Turner from the corner spot is going to be able to make a couple pass breakups in this game and maybe have an interception. But I think it is going to be that low-scoring type of game. The defenses are going to shine, and I think DJ Turner will make a couple big plays.
I think Mozzie Smith is going to be a beast in this game against that offensive line and collapse that pocket and have a really good game in clogging those run lanes. I think I'm going to go with him.
Similar to my staff pick, this could go either way, but I'm going to go with Mike Sainer still having a big day in coverage against Parker Washington. So
he's been so good, and he's a guy that, like, sometimes you don't even notice it, and that's a compliment to, a defensive back at times as well. Let's get out of here real quick with some picks from around the country. A great slate of college football this weekend, probably the best of the season, in my opinion. We have Alabama at Tennessee, number 3, at number 6, Tennessee, a 7-point underdog at home, over under 65.5. So expect a decent amount of scoring. Bryce Young is questionable. He's practiced this week. He's progressing. AC joint injury to the shoulder. Really torn. This is kind of the Tennessee game where if they win, I mean, they accelerate. Their rebuild is basically over. If they don't, then you could argue, and they could potentially spiral. You could argue they're kind of the same old Tennessee. But I got Alabama under the assumption that Bryce Young is going to play, but I don't feel great about it. I'm pretty torn.
If he plays and plays okay, I think Alabama wins by at least 2 scores. If he doesn't, I think Tennessee has a great chance to pull the upset. How's that?
I like it.
It's a hedge.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm gonna go with. I think Tennessee will cover in this game. I do think Alabama will win, regardless of result in this game. Tennessee is in great hands. I think Josh Heupel is a tremendous coach, and I said this on the board earlier today that it's amazing how things turn around from them, where you start just trying to win football games instead of winning your head coach's introductory press conference. So good on them. But they won't win this week, but they will cover.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, Josh Heupel's done a great job. Oklahoma State at TCU. TCU 4-point favorites at home, over under 68.5. I will take Oklahoma State in this game. They've already won a big game on the road at Baylor, so they're more tested in that area. But basically kind of a toss-up type of game, and the Big 12 is just absolutely wide open this season.
Yeah, why do we have this game on here? Nobody cares.
Top 15 ball game.
I get it. Still, nobody cares. Nobody in our audience. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State and Mr. I'm 40. I'm a man. I'm 40. I don't know.
I'm going to go with Oklahoma State as well. Also, it's a Big 12 game. I don't care what the over/under is. Take the over. So
yeah. That's true. The real college football fans will be excited to watch that one. Minnesota at Illinois is our next game.
There we go.
An even better matchup. Illinois 6.5-point underdogs at home, over/under. This is a Big 10 over/under. This is not a Big 12 over/under. 39 points. I'm just going to keep picking Illinois. It just seems to kind of work at this point. And I think there's a chance. We're looking at that game in November, the week before Ohio State, and that Illinois team is playing for something. But this is going to be an interesting matchup to watch, more so probably for us than people around the country. But I'm interested to see what happens here.
Is Mohamed Ibrahim playing?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, if he's playing, then
yeah, but they set these lines with the,
I get it.
Talking like factoring this stuff in.
I know. I'm not making actual bets. So,
yeah, I know.
I'm going to say that I like Illinois, man. I really do. I like their defense. They're playing tough defense, and Brett Bielema, has things going there. So I'll take Illinois as well.
Yeah, if Tommy DeVito plays, I would like Illinois in this game, but Artur Sitkowski is terrible. I'm going to go with Minnesota regardless here, but I don't feel good about it. And I'm not considering that pick canon. I could change it in my picks column. I might do that, but we'll see.
Is DeVito not playing?
I don't think they know yet, or it's questionable. But yeah. Sitkowski is a brutal quarterback.
Yes, he is.
Wisconsin at Michigan State. Michigan State 7-point underdogs at home, over under 49.5. I think we'll see some red maybe in the stadium again this weekend, but it's just hard for me to pick Michigan State. This is a better matchup stylistically, I think, for them because, Graham Mertz looked good last week, but I still am not sold on him as a quarterback. He's had about 2 good games in his entire career. So I think they have a chance to cover this spread, but I'll take Wisconsin.
He's playing a crappy pass defense, and they're starting to pick it up, and I think they're defensively they're going to be sound. I think Wisconsin wins this game by 2 scores.
I don't know that we'll see a lot of red in the stands, but we'll see a lot of silver. That is the silver color of the bleachers there.
The deep end.
Yeah, the deep end, the wood shop, whatever the hell they're calling it now. Their catchphrase of the week. I'm a big believer of the up-down theory. I don't know if it can get much worse for Michigan State, and Wisconsin played with an edge last week at Northwestern that it typically hasn't had as of late. I think Wisconsin will win, but somehow Michigan State will cover this, and it will be a competitive game.
Okay, there you have it. Taking you into the weekend. We'll talk more basketball next week after we get the Michigan players on Friday for Michigan basketball media. Anthony was in Minneapolis for Big Ten Media Day, but we got the bye week coming up, so great time to get to that type of stuff. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, head to thewolverine.com for all of your Michigan football coverage, and enjoy the game this weekend, everybody.